north. More showers to come as we go through the evening tomorrow across parts of Scotland in particular. Further south, sticking with that dry theme, so a fine end to the day for most of us. However, as we go into the weekend, the fine weather will continue with lots of sunshine on offer at times and just some showers towards the north, but some rain likely early next week. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Long delays in Cumbria on the M6. The motorway remains closed northbound from junction 36 to 38 from Kirkby Lonsdale up to T-Bay. Investigation works taking place following a serious accident. Long queues on the approach at Andover routes through Kendal as motorists avoid. And on the M62 in West Yorkshire, one lane's blocked westbound just before junction 26, the M606 Bradford exit after a car broke down at the Chain Bar interchange. Queues back to Tingley junction 28. On the M6 in the West Midlands, one lane's closed northbound 7 to 8, heading away from Birmingham towards the M5 after a lorry caught fire. Recovery works underway with queues back to junction 5 of Castle Bromwich. In the east end of London, the A11 Mile End Road is closed at Bethnal Green off Cambridge Heath Road following an accident, leaving a number of buses having to divert. And on London Underground, no Victoria Line, Brixton to Victoria. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on a chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs and Co. There's a lot to talk about today when it comes to crime, law and order, and prison sentencing. But do you remember the Tory plans for so-called mega prisons? Well, Labour is being urged to scrap those plans and instead spend that money on things like prevention and rehabilitation instead. Should they? And speaking of law and order, Jess Phillips has apologised for the comments that she made when many people said she basically was excusing people taking to the streets to batter white people. Your thoughts? And the Transport Secretary said, I quote, she's going to move fast and fix things in relation to this train strikes. Well, she's achieved that by giving a 15%, I also quote, no strings attached pay rise. I've got to be honest with you, I actually think my 3-year-old child could negotiate better than this. Your thoughts? And last but not least, is cancel culture real? All of that and more, but first, the 6 o'clock news headlines.
Michelle Michelle, thank you and good evening. The top stories. A 15-year-old boy from Sunderland has become the first person in England to be charged with the more serious offence of riot over recent unrest in the UK. That's according to the Crown Prosecution Service, in which that incident occurred on the 2nd of August. The boy appeared in court today and the case was adjourned for 2 weeks following what a district judge called a surprise charging decision. In other news, the proportion of A-level entries awarded top grades is up on last year and remains above pre-pandemic levels. Hundreds of thousands of students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland received their exam results today. More than 3/4 of English 18-year-old applicants have been accepted into their first choice of university, according to the government. But Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson says there are still inequalities in the education system.
Today is about celebrating the achievements of our young people, but I do recognise that the gaps that we've seen opening up under the last Conservative government where it comes to regional differences are really stark, and that gap is widening. There is an awful lot that we need to do, and I want to make sure as Education Secretary that we break down those barriers to opportunity for our young people, that where you're from doesn't determine what you can go on to achieve in life.
The economy is continuing its recovery from last year's recession, with growth extending over the latest quarter, according to official data. The ONS said gross domestic product increased by 0.6% between April and June. Labour's Darren Jones, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, says the government inherited a huge financial challenge from the Tories. However, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury Laura Trott says the economic growth is thanks to the previous Tory policies. British Challenger 2 tanks are thought to have been used in Ukraine's surprise incursion into Russia. It comes after the government confirmed Kyiv was free to use UK weapons inside Russian territory, with the exception of Britain's powerful Storm Shadow missiles. The latest turn in the conflict has sparked concerns about a wider escalation of tensions between Russia and the West. Staying with international news, and Hezbollah has launched more than 25 rockets and a suspected drone at northern Israel, according to Israel's military. The strikes are a significant escalation, but not the attack that Israel's been anticipating since the assassination of senior figures from Hamas and Hezbollah 2 weeks ago. The southern Lebanon-based terror group has been steadily stepping up attacks against Israel in recent days. Just after 2 p.m. local time today, a suspected drone entered Israeli airspace from Lebanon and was shot down over the Golan Heights, according to the IDF. Foreign Secretary David Lammy has said that resumed talks aimed at halting the Israel-Hamas war could define the future of the Middle East. His comments come as it was earlier reported that Israel's military offensive in the Gaza Strip has killed at least 40,000 Palestinians and wounded more than 92,000 since the October 7th attacks, according to the Hamas-run Health Ministry. A new round of ceasefire talks is taking place in the Qatari capital Doha in an effort to end 10 months of fighting in the Palestinian enclave and bring 115 Israeli and foreign hostages home. US News now. An arrest has been made in connection with the overdose death of actor Matthew Perry, according to US media. The Friends actor was found dead in a swimming pool at his home in California in October last year. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office attributed his death to the acute effects of ketamine, a sedative that can be used as a recreational drug as well as to treat depression. An individual was reportedly arrested in Southern California today. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been welcomed to Colombia as they begin their 4-day tour of the South American nation. Harry and Meghan were met in the capital, Bogotá, by Colombia's Vice President, Francia Marquez, and her husband. They spent around half an hour at the Vice President's residence, where they exchanged welcome gifts, and they were also offered tea, coffee, and traditional Colombian cheese bread. It's understood they'll focus on the impact of the digital world on young people, the military community and female empowerment. The Duke and Duchess will also explore Colombia's history and culture. And global superstar Taylor Swift is closing the European leg of her Eras tour with 5 nights at London's Wembley Stadium. These are live pictures where thousands of fans have been gathering all day. It is the first time that Taylor Swift returned to the UK since paying tribute, of course, to the victims of the Southport attack last month, where 3 little girls died in a mass stabbing at a dance class featuring her music. Earlier this month, Taylor Swift was forced to cancel 3 shows in Vienna after a suspected Islamist terror plot. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. It is over to Michelle.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks for that, Tatiana. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and James Schneider, the former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn. Good evening, gents. You're both very welcome, especially you, Kelvin, because viewers at home, what you won't realise is that every time I see Kelvin, he makes me laugh. You know, there's a lot of depressing stuff going on in the world. You just have to take one look at Kelvin's feet, and it is just enough to cheer a lady up. You go through some strange kind of midlife crisis.
It's
very, very odd.
I'm going back in time.
I took some pictures of some of the footwear that he actually comes to work in. I can't even believe what he wears. And one of these days, I will shame him by showing you them. But not tonight, you'll be pleased to know. You know the drill. It's all about you guys at home as well tonight. Get in touch all the usual ways. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.com, or you can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay, and talk to me there. Or, of course, you can tweet or X me. But you're very welcome tonight. Look, before we get stuck into law and order, Labour's relationship with the unions, cancel culture and all that good stuff, something did catch my eye today. It stopped me in my tracks. Take a look at this sculpture. This is something that Mark Zuckerberg, you know, the Facebook chief, he had this sculpture made. This is not a sculpture. This is Mark Zuckerberg. There is the sculpture. Look at this. A teal sculpture of his wife. He wants to bring back a Roman tradition. And I saw that and I thought, oh, I wonder if someone wants to make a Roman sculpture of me for their front garden. Is this the kind of thing you'd do for your loved one, Kelvin?
Well, I couldn't just do it for one, could I? So I just feel that my garden might be full of, with various divorces and relationships, might be full of sculptures. The one thing I can be sure of is that none of the holders of the important office of Mrs. Mackenzie would actually have a sculpture of me in their garden.
Oh, is it a dartboard or something with your face in the middle of it, I imagine? James, is that your kind of thing? Sculptures?
Well, I think we probably need to save up some money so that we can have a garden first before we can have any sculptures. So I think for now, she might have to do with flowers or something a bit lower cost.
See, that's when you know you're doing well in the world, isn't it? When you've got so much loose change that you can commission things like that for your own back garden. I like it. Anyway, look, let's talk serious matters. There's lots I want to discuss with you about law and order tonight. Not least, something caught my eye, dangerous career criminals, apparently with more than 100 convictions are apparently being spared jail time. This caught my eye. Let me just give you some stats about this, because apparently the number of people with multiple convictions that avoided prison has apparently tripled from 1,200 odd in 2007 to 3,325 in 2023. We're at a time where, you know, loose lips on Twitter can see you get sentenced. I don't agree necessarily with that approach, but I find it absolutely astonishing that you can have multiple convictions and not be sent to prison. What do you think to that?
Well, there was a case which caught my eye yesterday, which was the lady, I think she's like 53, and I think she's a carer for her rather sick husband, and she writes something really quite wrong on Facebook, and that's her, actually. And she ends up getting, I think, 18 months. I found that bizarre, because had this been 3 months ago, or is it 3 months ago, she probably got a suspended sentence for that.
Wasn't that the woman that was saying something like you should burn down a mosque or something with the adults in it?
Yeah.
I mean,
look,
you shouldn't really be saying that.
No, you should not be saying that. And one of the things that might come out of all this cracking down is that people will not be saying that in future on the basis that they may well be going to jail. All I am saying is that 3 or 4 months ago, she would have got a suspended sentence, which may not be right. But the thing is, she got 18 months. What about this? There's a guy in London who stole, on his e-bike, 24 mobile phones from various people in one single day. A massive criminal, a really nasty piece of work. He drove at 50 miles an hour down pavements. People had to scatter to get out of the way. He was chased by the cops and all the rest of it. He ended up getting 20 months, right? Why? All I'm saying is the Prime Minister has ordered the judges, correctly, probably, to crack down on these rioters, correctly, OK? Why don't we have the same sentencing policy throughout the whole year? So that when this guy who steals 20 phones in a day, right, why doesn't he get 5 years, right? Why doesn't he get 5 years? I mean, I agreed with. Do you remember that lady who was murdered in a pub by a machine gunner just before Christmas, on Christmas Eve, in fact? That killer got 48 years. He's 22 years old. He won't be out. That's the earliest he will be out, is when he's 70. OK? Fantastic. Why don't we have judges permanently on the case of these criminals?
Well, I would argue if you've been killing someone with a gun, you shouldn't be out at all, quite frankly. But anyway, whatever. James?
I do think we are seeing people getting prison terms for words, and then people not getting much for actions, and that's got to be a problem. There's one of these cases that's come up from the recent riots around that, but from the Online Harms Act that's now in place. And one of them I saw, I think it's on trial tomorrow. There was a rapper who on TikTok said something which is libelous about Tommy Robinson, but they're being taken for a criminal charge which could end up in a prison term, which seems to me quite weird. I think if you libel someone, then the person you've libelled is entitled to take you to court, and that's not a matter for our criminal justice system and our prisons, which really should be about serious offenders and people that are a danger to other people, and the rehabilitation of those where that's possible. So I think in some of these, and of course you can cherry-pick different cases.
I need to be clear about the particulars of the specifics of the case you're referring to, if I've got my facts straight. I think that you're referring to a fella that goes by the name of Twister Cheese.
Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, how pathetic. What kind of grown man calls himself Twister Cheese? Anyway, that aside, what he actually said was that he made some social media posts suggesting that Tommy Robinson had told people to attack mosques. And that was not true.
Yeah,
so the claim that he's found himself in trouble under is not just about, it's libel. It's about you've deliberately misrepresented something, and therefore you've perhaps incited other people to go out and retaliate. And I need to be careful because this is a live case.
So my point there is that we have libel law. Before we had the Online Harms Bill Act now, that we had libel, we still have libel. If he has libelled Tommy Robinson, then Tommy Robinson is entitled to take him to court for damages on that basis. I'm saying that if you say that, if I say Kelvin Mackenzie said, some offensive bad thing that he didn't say, I don't think I should be taken to criminal court. I think Kelvin is entitled to say...
I know, but we're in this whole different world now, and I do need to be careful about the specifics of the case that you're talking about, because, as you say, this person is back at court on Friday.
In more general terms.
So let me broaden this out. We have found ourselves in what I would almost call some kind of clown world, where we've rushed now to criminalise people for things that previously you shouldn't be doing, I don't think you should be doing. But whether or not they would be criminal acts that should result in prison time, I would personally dispute. And if you're going to do that on one side of the fence, so if you're going to start saying, and again, I need to be a bit careful about what I say because there's live criminal cases, but on one side of the fence, if you're going to start saying, you're going to be legally in trouble if you suggested that the killer of the Southport girls was an asylum seeker, and that's false, and then you whipped up hatred. If you're going to be in trouble on that side of the fence criminally for that, it then also stands to reason, if that is your kind of threshold and your mindset, then it also then stands to reason that on the other side of the fence, you would then be in trouble for suggesting that an individual, be that Tommy Robinson or whoever, has basically told people to smash up mosques and batter Muslims or whatever, which wasn't true.
So the problem, I think, is that we're playing a kind of reactive legal whack-a-mole, and that's what's going on, and that's not actually a sensible way to make laws. And what we're seeing is, yes, people say bad things on social media. Occasionally, or some of that, will end up being illegal in the sense that it's hate speech or it contributes to, it's a specific instruction to go and do an act which is criminal, which would be the same as if I were to say that in this studio now, that would be illegal. But I think on the social media thing, rather than focusing on how are certain pieces of news spread, how can we see what the algorithms are and how can that be public? And how can we have a system where if something isn't true, it isn't being spread, and we put the onus on the platforms that we're using and how we engage with those, rather than trying to endlessly do this weird balancing act of someone said a bad thing over here, that person's going to be dealt with. Now someone said a bad thing over here, we have to deal with this. And endlessly, this endless escalation of policing speech, rather than focusing on really, really bad crimes, really bad physical actions took place in the riots, and there would have been some speech acts which also are directly involved in those. Those are the things which should be the focus for law enforcement and the justice system. And then if we are concerned about the spread of lies, misinformation, untruths, etc., we should look at how those things are spread, which means understanding, which we don't know, social media algorithms. Those should be a public thing so that researchers, so that the government, so that all of us can say, this spread because of this reason, so that we can know if someone is in a febrile situation, someone does say something about something, we can say at this point something should click in so that that information doesn't spread, or things about that subject doesn't spread for X hours, or whatever it might be.
I know, but you know where you're going to head with that, because Elon Musk gets a load of hassle at the moment because people are saying, it's created this Wild West or whatever in Twitter or X. But before Elon Musk actually took over that platform, there was so much throttling of information based on it being what I would call the wrong kinds of opinions. So many people were shadow banned and things like that to stop their perspectives from getting traction, because whoever was running that platform at the time, I would argue, didn't really like those kind of opinions. So you've got to be careful what you wish for.
But actually, there was another reason as well. They were trying to protect, and as most of the mainstream media is today, they're trying to protect their advertising base. Because if you appeal to the left, then the big advertisers will come in, right? Whether it be Disney or Unilever or any of those, they'll all come in. Immediately, the right start getting a view, right? Then suddenly that advertising gets pulled. It's an incredible and difficult moment. So my bet is in the future, if I'm still around in 10 years' time, my bet is that X or Twitter will be behind a paywall.
Actually, go.
I think transparency is the thing that we want. I don't think some kind of secretive agreement between governments and social media companies is in any way good, because views that are opposed to the government are more likely to be shut down than other ones. But us being able to see publicly, why did X get shown, sorry, not X as in Twitter, why did some post get shown to loads of people? You can see the algorithm, we can research it and understand it, because this is our public forum now. 20 years ago, researchers
These are private companies.
Sure, and so
why should this is Elon Musk's? I don't want to go Kentucky Fried Chicken, your special secret recipe or whatever. But why would he disclose his trade secret?
Because it's to
everybody.
This is the public forum, in exactly the same way that GB News or newspapers have some responsibilities to the wider public, and therefore there should be a degree of transparency. Now, the transparency in newspapers was, well, the thing was published, so you could go and have a look, and you could do research and analysis of it. Likewise, TV. You could research how long things were watched for, what was watched, what's broadcast and how. We can't do that with social media because it's a hidden thing with the algorithm. And that is what information we are shown. That is the public sphere of today. So we have to be able to see why we are being shown the information that we're shown. That's not a bad thing. It doesn't impinge on those. We're saying that should happen for all of the social media sites. And, and that should be clear and open.
Just briefly, Kelvin.
The answer then is to go behind a paywall so that you don't have to face the idea that this is not open for all, right? That's what I would do. I'd do it tomorrow. And it would stop Musk railing on all the time about the fact that there's no advertising and get people to pay. In essence, I pay anyway to get a blue tick. I pay £8 a month as it stands. I want everybody. It'd keep the left off because they can't afford it.
Kelvin. Look, after the break, speaking of social media, Jess Phillips, she is at a rowback on some of the comments that she made on social media, when I would argue she was pretty much defending people, mobs taking to the streets, tooled up, looking for people to attack also as well. One of the prison bosses, former prison chiefs, he's come out and basically said, stop these plans to expand prisons and build mega prisons and so on. Instead, spend that money on things like rehabilitation and prevention. Is that a plan that you would get behind? I'll see you in 2.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Losing someone, saying goodbye, never easy, but there is a way, maybe, to make it slightly more manageable, depending how you think.
Yeah, we're going to speak now to the comedian and British icon, frankly, Paul Chuckle. He thinks it's time to put the fun into funeral. This is after, sadly, he lost his brother, Barry, and Paul now wants to highlight what he perceives to be changing attitudes to the way we hold funerals.
Well, Paul, a very good morning to you. First of all, condolences about Barry. We all knew him, and obviously you still miss him.
Yes, good morning to you too. Yeah, obviously, it was 6 years ago yesterday that he passed away. It's gone very quick, but in Barry's funeral case, you know, it was a thing of celebrating his life, really. All his friends were there, people we've worked with over the years, and we just talked all afternoon and evening about his life. It's more of a celebration.
New research from Co-op Funeral Care says that people are more coming round to this way of thinking, that in the way they dress and what they sing, and taking selfies at funerals, all sorts of things. And by and large, I mean, bearing in mind how you said goodbye to Barry, which I believe was at Rotherham Football Club, was it?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it's always a very sad day when you lose someone. But as a report from Co-op Funeral Care says, a funeral doesn't have to be a sad day, which it wasn't there. See, Barry and myself always been big Rotherham United fans, and the thing was to have his funeral, really, most of his funeral on the day at New York Stadium.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company till 7 alongside me. What a treat for us all, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin McKenzie, and James Schneider, the former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn. Look, we were just talking about social media before the break. Many of you will have seen a post from the Home Office Minister, Jess Phillips. She did this tweet, which many people have actually said that she excused rioters. This was all about when people were taking to the streets, and I've got to say, misinformation was flying about all over the place, wasn't it? And she was basically saying that people have taken to the streets essentially in self-defence. I'm paraphrasing, but that was the gist of what she said. Anyway, she's now said that she's made a mistake there, and that when you make mistakes, it's important that you try and correct those things in the, the present tense and so on and so forth. Was she right, basically, to row back on what she said?
Well, she was right. It's taken a few days. for it to come out. I mean, I can't remember how many days it would have taken. Where are we now? It's probably taken the thick end of nearly a week, I think, for it to be, because she needn't have joined in, but I presume the reason that she joined in is the politics of the votes in that area, which damaged her in the election uniquely, in which the Muslim voters in the area. She was very, very lucky. I think she got in by a few hundred, didn't she?
I think it was about 1,000.
And she also complained. She also complained about the manner in which she was treated. Right? She said the abuse was phenomenal, but actually she managed to say the abuse was phenomenal, making it clear that this was abuse she got generally, whereas in fact it was abuse that she got particularly from one part of the voting community. So she had to make that tweet. I should imagine it was pressure from within the upper echelons of the Labour Party, and I'm pleased she's done it.
Well, anyway, she said she's going to choose her words more carefully in the future. James?
I think we should all choose our words more carefully in
I think we should just sit here in silence.
There'll be no show
in prison at this rate. Go on. Carry on. What was you saying?
No, MPs apologise for saying things wrong all the time, and she thinks that she said that wrong and should choose her words better. I think in general terms as well, as we clearly all agree, lots of people should have said things or not said things over the last couple of weeks, especially when there's like live, ongoing and things are unclear, when it's easy to make mistakes and not have all of the facts at hand.
Well, if anything has come of all of this whole sorry mess, it's that so many people are absolutely terrified now when they do go on places like Twitter and X, worried about what it is that they're going to write. One of my viewers, Michelle, says, Michelle, why, when it's a Labour MP, can they just get away with apologising and everybody moves on? Can you imagine if this was a Reform member or someone like that, there'd be calls for them to be sacked and so on and so forth? Keep your thoughts on that one coming in. But talking about this whole sentencing and prisons and all the rest of it now, a former prison chief, he is suggesting now, do you remember the Tories wanting to expand prison places and build so-called mega prisons? He's suggesting actually that those plans should be ripped up and that money should instead be reinvested on things like prevention and rehabilitation. Kelvin?
Well, he's a skilled guy. OK, I think he was the head of the parole board as well as the head of the
Nick Hardwick, the guy's name. He's a former chief inspector of prisons.
So he's no fool. And however, the problem for our country is that we have a lot of criminals. I see that the Met today has got a lot of a bucket poured on them after an investigation. Now, we only have 33,000 police officers in London. OK, that is not enough. We have a number in London of about 10 to 11 million people now, right? Scotland, for instance, is half the size and it's got 22,000. We need to spend more money on the police. We need to put more bad people away to protect us. Now, does this guy who runs the parole board or run the prison service, does he got some magic bullet which is going to mean that those people who are criminals, who when they come out again, fancy going back into crime, can be persuaded that they won't do crime? There are a certain number of people I know who have gone to jail, come out and have never committed a crime afterwards. Jolly good. I find it hard to believe that we have some kind of magic drug out there, which this guy seems to know, which we can talk to people in a way which encourages them not to commit crimes in the future. There are a lot of criminals out there, and there are a lot of criminals in London, and I feel very, very sorry for anybody who is a police officer in the Met who has to deal with some of the scum they come across every day.
James?
I agree that we should listen to this guy, Nick Hardwick, because he's an expert and he knows what he's talking about. Doesn't mean he's necessarily right, but he definitely has an idea about what he's talking about. And the basic point is prison numbers have gone up, but that hasn't reduced crime. And the metaphor that he's used is that it's bailing water out of the bathtub with the tap still on. And that instead we should be looking at how do you at least reduce the flow of the tap, which seems pretty sensible to me. There are lots of things that lots of other countries have done on prevention, which does reduce criminality. There are things that can be done with community policing, with youth centres, with education and so on. And it seems to me quite sensible that we would have more investment, and it is investment in that, because it's reducing the future costs of, if we're looking at this thing straight in front of us, there's £4 billion that they're going to spend on more prison places. If we didn't have to spend that money, that would be a very good thing, if we could spend it on other things that we would like. So investment in reducing crime, none of us are particular experts in prevention, but you can read the material. There is stuff that can be done. And I think investing in those things seems pretty sensible to me.
I tried very hard to find a comment from James Timpson, who's the new prisons minister. I really like this guy. You probably heard me talk about him on my show before. I really like him. I've got a lot of respect for him. Right. He was recently given this role, obviously, by Keir Starmer. He's previously said in the past that he thinks, for example, only about a third of prisoners should perhaps actually even be in prison. And, he's got a really interesting family background and so on and so forth. And I wonder what he thinks to the wave of sentencing, what we're currently seeing. We've just been hearing there about a 15-year-old being charged, 13-year-old being charged. Children being charged, potentially will be heading off to detention. And I'm fascinated to hear his views on all this.
Right. Well, I
don't know where he's been.
Well, you know why he doesn't say anything? Because he doesn't agree with it. I mean, he's just started the job, right? And we would like to hear from the prisons minister. After all, we're up to there in prisoners, and we are now adding a whole load of scum. Yeah, a whole load of really nasty people are going in there, absolutely filling the place up and allowing other people to come out the other way earlier. For instance, instead of serving 50% of your sentence, you're only going to serve 40% of your sentence. So there is a madness about what's going on. I'm not against it, 100% in favour. The reason you don't hear from him is he doesn't agree with what's going on. And what will be interesting is if your conversation about saying, well, what have you got to say? If you tweeted, what have you got to say, Mr. Timpson, on Twitter now, and that became a thing, I guarantee you within a couple of days he will say something.
Yeah, just to be clear, I haven't spoken to James Timpson. I can't find any comment from him, and I've looked high and low for this. So I don't know if what Kelvin's saying is accurate or not. He's not here to put his side of the story across, but I would be very fascinated to hear what he says. And James, I find this whole notion that this prison crisis, that it just seems to have crept up on people and caught people by surprise in government, this overcrowding and lack of capacity, and I don't understand it. Because surely we should have been building extra prisons ages ago.
It shouldn't have done, and there are different approaches. I remember when the Tories first came in 2010, and they had a completely different approach at the time, which was they were going to try to reduce prison numbers by reducing some of the smaller sentences, like the train of ASBOs into prison that had come up under New Labour. And then we ended up completely U-turning a year later and going back to the policy of putting people in prisons, or putting more people in prisons, expanding the prison population. But not building things. But then we haven't built anything for 14 years. And all of this stuff, the problem is if you stop investing in things, I don't just mean prisons, in youth centres, in roads, in railways, in our energy infrastructure, if you stop investing in things, you save money in year one, and then a big costs are down the road, which is what we've seen with schools, with the some schools falling down and so on.
Right. Well, so where is the money going to come from? This great nirvana that you're talking about. I mean, the investment in our country would go off the dial, and there is only one collection of people who are going to pay it. It's going to be the middle class.
In the last 14 years, we've had near zero interest rates. It would have been incredibly easy for the government to borrow for investment if it would yield a return.
It's not true, man. We had austerity, that we were so short of money that the Tories had to bring in austerity for order for us to balance the books.
They didn't have to bring in austerity to balance the books.
That's what the left say.
No, it's also now what even the IMF says. It's now what all economists say. Now they say, oh, sorry, it was a mistake in a spreadsheet.
No, I've never seen that. You can tweet that to me.
I'll tweet that to you.
There you go. That's your bedtime reading for tonight. And when you talk about borrowing costs and all the rest of it, I know that many of you guys at home will be shouting about PFI contracts and the way that people did borrow money, of course, from the private sector. And it has absolutely rinsed us taxpayers, let's face it, when it comes to repaying those loans. Charlie says, Michelle, when you all keep talking about more police officers, please can we be clear? Because at the moment, police seem to do so much paperwork. So we don't need police officers to do paperwork. We need police officers to be on the front line. One of my viewers as well, Alan, says, can you tell your panellists, he means you, to think before you engage your brain?
Right, well,
he says that you've suggested...
Tell him to watch another show.
You don't know what you've done yet, so I'm telling you.
Tell him to watch another show.
Suggesting, he says, that social media should be behind a paywall. So he says what you're saying, basically, is that only the well-to-do in society should be able to communicate.
I like that idea.
There you go, I told him. Make of his response what you will. After the break, I want to talk to you then about public money. Labour now, how are they dealing with the unions? Do you think they're just too soft with them? The right approach, or what? Your thoughts?
Hey, good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. Looking ahead to tomorrow, and there will be sunny spells for many of us and just a few showers in the north. But before then, we do have some wet weather around at the moment. We do have a frontal system that's still making its way southeastwards, and this is going to bring quite a bit of cloud, quite a bit of rain across much of England and Wales through the end of the evening, pushing away towards the southeast as we go through the early hours of Friday morning. Could be some heavy bursts amongst it before it eventually clears away towards the southeast through tomorrow itself. Behind it, some clearer skies, and under the clearer skies, temperatures may drop a little bit lower than they have done through some recent nights, some places getting into mid-single figures. So first thing tomorrow morning, it is going to be a bit of a damp start across some parts of the far southeast, particularly towards Kent. Here we could have some outbreaks of rain for a time before that front clears away. Across the southwest of England, it's brighter, also across much of Wales and the Midlands, some decent sunshine early on, and a similar story further north for northern England, Northern Ireland and into Scotland. There will be some decent sunny spells here, but for western Scotland, quite a few showers already developing, and these showers are going to continue as we go through the day tomorrow. They're always going to be most frequent across western, northwestern parts of Scotland, and here we will also have some blustery winds pushing their way in, and those blustery winds are going to add to the slightly cooler feel to things across northern parts of the UK. Further towards the south-southeast, once the cloud and the rain clears away, it should feel pretty warm with temperatures in the mid-20s Celsius. Looking ahead to Saturday, and again we're going to see some showers across northern and western parts. Not many showers, but a few coming through at times, and some brisk winds towards the far northwest. A greater chance of staying dry and avoiding the showers towards more eastern, southeastern parts. Sunday looks like a relatively similar day with more showers across the north before some wet weather arrives for many of us by Monday. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Major problems in Cumbria continues on the M6. The northbound carriageway of the motorway remains shut from junction 36 at Kirkby Lonsdale to 38 at T-Bay. Investigation works ongoing following a serious accident. There are lengthy queues on the approach and en route through Kendal as you have been diverting this evening, particularly for the A6. Meanwhile, on the M1 in Derbyshire, the two inside lanes of 4 are closed northbound at junction 28. The A38 Alfred and Mansfield turn off, of course, the car's broken down, taking about a quarter of an hour to get through. On the M6 in the West Midlands, one lane's closed northbound from junction 7 to 8 towards the M5 where a lorry is on fire. And on the M25 on the western stretch, the motorway is blocked clockwise just after the M40 where a car is broken down. On the M23 southbound junction 9 to 10 towards Crawley, a breakdown's blocking off the inside lane. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7. Alongside me, Kelvin McKenzie and James Schneider remain. One of my viewers, Neil, you're not messing around. You fixed all the problems when it comes to law and order. You say two-pronged approach. Number 1, bring back the death penalty. And number 2, deport foreign prisoners then you'd find yourself with lots of space. Oh, I can tell you now, there'll be many people, Neil, that disagree with that, but equally, I suggest that perhaps many people that also agree with you. Look, let's talk, shall we then, the situation with Labour and the unions. Let me play you, before we get into this, a clip from our Transport Minister. Take a listen to this.
I became Transport Secretary, I said we'd move fast and fix things, and that's exactly what we're doing. I'm delighted that we have put forward a 3-year pay deal so that drivers across our railways can vote on it and hopefully bring an end to over 2 years of damaging strikes that have cost the taxpayer more than £800 million in lost revenue and hurt the economy even more. The previous government deliberately provoked and prolonged these strikes and hurt passengers and the economy. In direct contrast, this Labour government will always put passengers first.
I have a very strong response to this, I can tell you, but I'll go straight over to you, Kelvin McKenzie. ASLEF, the union here, they are delighted with this, so they describe it as
they should be.
No strings offer.
No, it's a disgrace. First of all, that lady, Louise Haigh, you should know her background. Unite shop steward, both her grandfather and her uncle were trade union officials. So when she sits around the table, she might as well sit on the same side as Whelan. I mean, they were going to sail through this no matter what happened. So there is that aspect to it. So what I want to know is the government acting for the taxpayer, or is it acting for the consumer, the passenger? Is it acting for anybody except the trade union? I love that dispute that was going on, because what it proved over 18 months, over 18 days, over 2 years, is they had no strength. This is not like when I was at a journo, where actually, if the ASLEF went on strike or the RMT went on strike, wallop, everything was shut down. Honestly, we learned something else. It's called working from home. And on that basis, they had no strength, and we should have toughed them out and eventually let them go. That I would have been as simple as that. And there was no point having a Secretary of State for Transport who is completely and utterly wired into the trade union movement.
James Schneider?
I think that's complete nonsense. The train strike, which was being propped up by the government were, in effect, paying our money to the train operators to not settle with staff. So the government, again, I'll say that again, the government were, in effect, paying the private operators to not settle the strike, not settle the pay dispute, has cost us hundreds of millions of pounds in direct taxpayer money and many more hundreds of millions of pounds in the cost of the disruption through the strikes. So it's a very good thing that this is settled, and train drivers, like everyone else basically in the country, has not seen a pay rise for a very long time, and we should all have a pay rise. We shouldn't have falling living standards in a country as wealthy as ours. And so it's a good agreement. As for this thing about it being a problem to have someone who understands trade unions negotiating around the table with trade unions, it seems like a good outcome. A strike that's been going on that has been costing us hundreds of millions of pounds of taxpayers' money. Now, if at the ASLEF members, if the train drivers accept the deal, will be over and everybody can move on.
Well, my sense is that, so since the government have come in, this new government have come in, there's been a queue outside number 10 of trade union officials, right, of various unions. Now, first of all, the teachers turn up. Inflation 2%, you can have 5.5. Doctors turn up, you can have 22%, and now this lot, you can have 15% over 3 years. Honestly, why don't they just say, if you're a member of a state-run union which can cause pain to us, you just give us a whistle and we'll send the money around by Securicor. I feel that actually somebody has to pay that bill, and I'm concerned about where that bill has to come.
The bill has been built up over the last 14 years of year-on-year pay cuts, which is why in the NHS, for nurses, doctors, and in our school system with teachers, we have a retention crisis. There are huge numbers.
True of all jobs. True of all jobs, not just state jobs. Every employer that you have here would say exactly the same thing. So it's not fair, that argument.
Well, for schools and for hospitals, it definitely is, because there are lots of unfilled vacancies and there is a big retention crisis, and there's a huge amount of literature on it, and it's much more than in other industries. So this is a problem that's been built up over 14 years, which needs dealing with. If you look at teachers, if you look at nurses, if you look at doctors, they've had pay cuts every single year for 14 years. So there's
lots of jobs like that,
there should be no jobs.
There are lots of jobs like that,
and there should be
you get
no
paid
jobs.
The same today as you would have done 20 or 30 years ago. That is just life.
And it's not just life. There should be no jobs like that. And the fact that some workers can organise in their trade unions to get a pay rise is a good thing.
In order to make me suffer.
No, it helps. It
so
helps
somebody has to suffer for them to get money.
No, it doesn't. It helps.
If you're a doctor, you have to kill somebody. Charming.
What?
Well, yeah. Look, somebody's suffering from cancer. They go to get a treatment. What happens is the doctors are on strike that day. What happens to that cancer treatment? It doesn't happen. How do you know that it hasn't accelerated that lady's death or that man's death or some relative's death?
Strong feelings in the studio. You will have strong feelings on this. At home, the conversation will continue in 2.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, in the UK, King Charles called for, quote, community spirit and compassion following the disorder we've seen on the streets in recent weeks. The King's also thanks the police for their efforts to restore peace, as well as the communities who came out to counter the violence. Joining me now is royal and showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield. What do you make, first of all, of King Charles and sort of intervening, I guess, on the riots? He's got a bit of stick this side of the pond, because people are saying, well, look, it's OK for you living in your palaces with all your money coming out your ears. You're out of touch, really, with the working class and the concerns of people in this country about, issues such as migration.
Yeah, I think in today's polarizing society in both of our countries, being a good leader while trying to avoid politics can feel like navigating a minefield. The king is being very careful and strategic in his reaction. He's emphasizing shared goals, focusing on the common objectives and mission of the community. He's trying to align everyone around a shared vision that transcends individual differences, and encouraging transparency and open dialogue by allowing everyone to voice their opinions and concerns in a legal and productive way that doesn't jeopardize anyone's safety. And I think you can create a culture of trust where people feel heard and valued. Aside from his family's multiple cancer scares, this is the most difficult period he's had as king, and he is fully aware that the way he responds to this unrest could define him in the history books. But he's in this bizarre position in the sense that his power is limited. In America, we consider the royal family these beautiful, glamorous mascots. They really, truly are so limited in what they're capable of doing over there. So I imagine that there are some concerns in the background, but he's not really in a position to voice them.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said stump.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry, James Schneider and Kelvin Mackenzie, Tools 7. One of my viewers, John, says, Michelle, I used to negotiate with the unions and I could tell you now the approach that's been shown from Labour will only embolden other people. Interesting views. Many people say, please, can you point out, we're talking about the cost of strikes, ongoing pay rises, of course, that is ad infinitum, year on year on year. Really are actually quite divided. One of my viewers says, please, can you point out that some of these train drivers, they're higher taxpayers, so now we'll be getting some of that money back in additional taxes. I always find it quite interesting as well about potential conflicts of interest, because ASLEF, of course, they were one of the biggest donors to the Labour Party in the election campaign. What do you think to that? We didn't even touch on the issue of these pay rises for train drivers being no strings attached. If you've got an industry which is rapidly failing and you need to rejuvenate it and transform it, how you've negotiated and agreed terms on one hand with nothing being given on the other when it comes to, you know, revising the way they work is beyond me. But anyway, look, let's talk about Gale's Bakery. Have you got one in your neighbourhood? There's a neighbourhood now that are protesting. They don't want this Gale's to open in their midst for a variety of different reasons. But the reason that struck me is one local business owner said, this is an area in London, Walthamstow. He went on to say that recently we've had this big diverse counter-protest to protect Walthamstow from the far right. And I don't think the owner of Gale's would support that. He's very different to the people here. His views are not the same, and therefore the suggestion is that his business is not welcome.
Well,
your thoughts?
Well, a preposterous argument. The truth about the matter is it's Luke Johnson. He's not of the far right. He possibly, I don't know what his politics are. I should imagine it, having looked at his tweets, he's a Conservative. He's done a fantastic job. He founded Pizza Express and now he's the chairman of this Gale's. Right. It's up to people whether companies work or not. And if there's anybody in the left in Walthamstow who doesn't want to go into that shop, there'll be loads of other coffee shops around there, and not probably as upscale as that particular bakery. I mean, the truth about the matter is that the quotes I read from a couple of them came from other coffee shop owners who are hostile to the competition. In my high street in Weybridge, they've just opened a Gale's. There's a queue out the door all the time. I went in there once, I found it too expensive, and I went round to Pretz. That's known as choice. The idea that there are some people in Walthamstow who are so politically motivated they actually want new businesses which employ people not to open is absolutely ridiculous.
James?
I mean, I think Kelvin is right in that if you don't like it, you can go somewhere else, and that's fine. But I also think it's quite normal for people to care about what's on their high street, and if 500 people have signed this petition saying that they don't want that there, I think that's fine. There's all sorts of other shops, businesses, depots, whatever that open up in different communities, and people say for whatever reason, whatever it might be, taste, politics, environmental, whatever, that they don't want it there, and that's reasonable. That's
and
fine.
That also works on the other side, doesn't it? So your Gale's, you say, well, I tell you what, Walthamstow can go and get stuffed. I'm going to go and open one up in Wiltshire, or there's a million places that Gale's can open up and put their money in. And if the people of Walthamstow don't want it, that's fine. But they'd just be mad. It's just choice. We want choice in our country, more choice. So I want more people to run our railways rather than be nationalised.
Looking at your waistline, I think you need less choice when it comes to the bakeries available in your neighbourhood.
On competing rail lines next to each other. You get like 3 rail lines running.
Good. If somebody could afford it, I'd be delighted. I would go on the cheapest.
Look, do you know what? I just say to everyone, grow up. If you don't want to shop at whatever it is, don't shop there. If you don't want to watch this or if you don't want to buy that, just don't buy it, don't watch it. Grow up trying to dictate what everybody else can and cannot spend their life doing, buying, watching, eating. You're pathetic. That's what I say to you. Anyway, look, one of my viewers blames the parents of these kids that have been getting involved in rioting. She said that it's the parents that should be sent to prison, not the kids. Cool, blimey. I'll leave you to ponder that tonight. But for now, James, Kelvin, thank you very much for your company. Thank you to each and every one of you at home. Don't go anywhere. It's Farage Show up next. But I will see you tomorrow. Night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hey, good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. Looking ahead to tomorrow, and there will be sunny spells for many of us and just a few showers in the north. But before then, we do have some wet weather around at the moment. We do have a frontal system that's still making its way southeastwards, and this is going to bring quite a bit of cloud, quite a bit of rain across much of England and Wales through the end of the evening, pushing away towards the southeast as we go through the early hours of Friday morning. Could be some heavy bursts amongst it before it eventually clears away towards the southeast through tomorrow itself. Behind it, some clearer skies, and under the clearer skies, temperatures may drop a little bit lower than they have done through some recent nights, some places getting into mid-single figures. So first thing tomorrow morning, it is going to be a bit of a damp start across some parts of the far southeast, particularly towards Kent. Here we could have some outbreaks of rain for a time before that front clears away. Across the southwest of England, it's brighter, also across much of Wales and the Midlands, some decent sunshine early on, and a similar story further north for northern England, Northern Ireland and into Scotland. There will be some decent sunny spells here, but for western Scotland, quite a few showers already developing, and these showers are going to continue as we go through the day tomorrow. They're always going to be most frequent across western, northwestern parts of Scotland, and here we will also have some blustery winds pushing their way in, and those blustery winds are going to add to the slightly cooler feel to things across northern parts of the UK. Further towards the south-southeast, once the cloud and the rain clears away, it should feel pretty warm with temperatures in the mid-20s Celsius. Looking ahead to Saturday, and again we're going to see some showers across northern and western parts. Not many showers, but a few coming through at times, and some brisk winds towards the far northwest. A greater chance of staying dry and avoiding the showers towards more eastern southeastern parts. Sunday looks like a relatively similar day with more showers across the north before some wet weather arrives for many of us by Monday. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Big problems in Cumbria for the M6. The motorway remains closed northbound from junction 36 to 38 on that long stretch from Kirkby Lonsdale up to the T-Bay exit. Investigation work is still taking place following an accident of long queues through Kendal as you've been diverting since this morning. On the M62 in Greater Manchester, now one lane still closed eastbound from junction 18 to 19, heading away from the M66 to the Hayward exit following an accident. It's queuing back to the M60, not being helped by the bad weather on that stretch. On the M6 in the West Midlands, one lane's closed northbound 7 to 8 towards the M5. A lorry caught fire. It's been put out, but recovery work is still taking place. Long queues back to the M42. And on the Essex stretch of the M25, the two inside lanes closed anti-clockwise just before the M11. A lorry's caught fire after the Belcommon Tunnel. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
You really could become the next giveaway winner with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I won the Spring Great British giveaway. So the day we got the money in our bank account, everything just felt just a lot nicer. We went out for dinner, just enter. And you never expect to win, but I did.
Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camila Tomy, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camila Tomy Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
A very good evening to you. I'm Martin Dewberry. I'm standing in for the big man, Nigel Farage. Now, shocking remarks by Priti Patel in a GB News exclusive interview in which she defends the Tory party's migration record.
I mean, knock on doors and ask your listeners, your viewers, would they say we should not have had more doctors and nurses? I think they would not say that. That's what they...
Well, that's an astonishing position. Believe me, you will not want to miss the full interview. Next up, data suggests that career criminals with more than 100 convictions are being spared jail time, whilst the Metropolitan Police finds itself under the cosh for failing to adequately investigate crimes. Next up, the Labour Party have made milestones with public sector pay deals, but so far it's estimated that this will exceed the £22 billion black hole they inherited from the Tories. Is the black hole about to become a super black hole? All that after your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories this evening. A 15-year-old boy from Sunderland has become the first person in England to be charged with the more serious offence of riot over recent unrest in the UK. That's according to the Crown Prosecution Service, in which the incident occurred on the 2nd of August. The boy has appeared in court today and the case was adjourned for 2 weeks following what a district judge called a surprise charging decision. In other news, the proportion of A-level entries awarded top grades is up on last year and remains above pre-pandemic levels. Hundreds of thousands of students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland received their exam results today. More than 3/4 of English 18-year-old applicants have been accepted into their first choice of university, according to the government. But Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson earlier said there are still inequalities in the education system. The economy is continuing its recovery from last year's recession, with growth extending over the latest quarter, according to official data. The ONS said gross domestic product increased by 0.6% between April and June. Labour's Darren Jones, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, says the government inherited a huge financial challenge from the Tories. However, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Laura Trott, says the economic growth is thanks to previous Tory policies. Sweden has confirmed it's recorded its first case of a contagious new variant of monkeypox, a day after the World Health Organization declared it a global health emergency. The strain emerged in the Democratic Republic of Congo, with more than 17,000 cases and over 570 deaths in Africa this year, according to the WHO, which exceeds last year's total. Scientists from the Africa Centres for Disease Control and Prevention report 96% of all cases and deaths have been in DR Congo. The UK Health Security Agency says there are currently no cases of the virus in the UK, and its deputy director claims the risk is currently considered low. 5 people have been charged in connection with actor Matthew Perry's death from an accidental ketamine overdose last October.